Welcome back. We have another episode of the Wyrd Way here. I'm sitting beside my brother, Jason Bluett, and he is the director and creator of the Primal Man Project, and I'm looking forward to this conversation, man.
Nice, bro. Good to be here.
Thank you, man. One of the reasons I feel like I'm excited to have this conversation is I know both of us have had a lot of interest in the men's workspace, masculinity, and helping men connect back to their masculinity as a whole. And I know for myself, this has been such a journey of rediscovering what it means to be a man in a healthy expression and learning, I can express this part of myself and know how to integrate that within society. So I'm wondering if we can just dive in and you share a bit about your own journey of what led you to this path of wanting to both lead men, but also reconnect into your own masculinity.
Yeah. Depends on how far we want to go back in the story. Go back right to the beginning. So I was born and raised in Papua New Guinea. So I had some really cool early experiences that I didn't realize at the time were probably planting seeds. Grew up around men and boys being initiated. We would go on picnics to creeks and things, and I'd get told as a kid, don't go down to that creek. That's a women's creek. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? The women's creek? The women don't own the creek. It's a creek. It's a creek. And I said, no, trust me. It's a sacred women's business down there. It's just better this way. Just don't go there. I was like, okay, right. So that sort of planted a seed, and, would be driving around at different times and see these interesting rituals and ceremonies going on. And that hut down the beach, that's a men's hut. I'm like, what do you mean a men's hut? Like, well, the cats and the dogs and the chickens and the boys, they're all male. It's just it's a male space. It's sacred, and they do secret men's business. It's like, well, what do they do? It's like, well, it's fucking secret, dickhead. And so there were these, interesting experiences that I didn't realize later would sort of come full circle. And, grew up in that amazing environment in PNG, right? Learned so much without realizing I was learning it. And then fast forward, I came to Australia, did the boarding school thing. So the complete polar opposite, I don't like the word toxic masculine, but if it was a word that was used, probably a good place to talk about it. It was racist, chauvinist, sexist, all the ists, fucking all boys, Catholic boarding school, hostile environment. And masculinity was at its most distorted in that environment. So I had this fish out of water experience, and it was, it was a real contrast experience. I didn't feel comfortable with men. I thought men were cunts. I thought they were fucking just mean, nasty people that wanted to get off on hurting people, because that was what that environment fostered, that dominance of boys over other boys. There were no good masculine men to initiate those boys. It was boys initiating themselves. So followed the dutiful path of career and went studied in uni and got married young and kind of went down the typical, corporate path. Went and got a job, got married, had the wife and kids, and just had a really challenging time with my wife's mental health. She attempted suicide a few times. My marriage broke down, and I just went down the gurgler, because everything in my life was created around following this career path, doing the thing that I was supposed to do, and it was just, when the house of cards of the bullshit world that I'd created for myself came tumbling down, it was like there was nothing underneath it. There was nothing. There was no tribe. There was no connection. There was no self-responsibility. I didn't have masculine role models. And so I just took a very destructive path to feeling good and comfortable about myself. Lots of dating, lots of women, lots of sex. And it became a sex addiction, issue for me. And eventually somebody said to me, a couple of different people said, hey, what you're doing is not working. How you doing life? Just, you need to go and do some work on yourself. So I went along to my first men's work event back in 2018. And that was the moment that kind of felt like it put the puzzle piece in that had been missing. It sort of felt like it came full circle. And I had good, strong, masculine men who gave a fuck about what I'd experienced, who called me out on what I was doing, called me forward into, a more integral version of myself. And for me, it was like, holy shit. Okay, this is what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have an initiatory process, in a man's life. There's supposed to be a tribe to belong to. There's supposed to be this feeling of sacredness about our life and about who we are as men. And I was like, man, this is it. This is the piece that was missing for me, but also for everybody else. That's probably the 2-minute summary story version.
I love this so much. And a big thing I'm passionate about is like the seeds that are planted along the way. And like, I can see that so clearly. And it sounds like you see that as well, of like that experience in Papua New Guinea where you had this experience of like what it means to be around men who are initiated and other men who are connected to like, this is masculine, this is feminine, and being guided through that. And then the disconnect that occurred that bred something completely different, and actually returning to that. And I'm curious, like when you're looking back at that now, like does it feel like that all needed to happen to bring you here?
100%. Yeah. Didn't know the purpose of it, but it can see it really clearly, connecting the dots looking back. But it was, I was a fish out of water everywhere because I was a white kid in a black country. And so I was never initiated in that environment. I never got to belong into those processes. And when I was in Australia, I was a fish out of water because I was a white kid who probably acted more like a black kid in a very white country. And so everywhere I was an outsider. And so what I really craved was belonging. And once I found that belonging, you know, strangers that gave more fucks about me than my own family, you know, in terms of being able to have those conversations. And I don't want to hang any shade on my family, but just gave the things to me that I needed that I had never been provided. And that sense of belonging was, again, you know, something I always missed. And now, you know, I create belonging for men. You know, the work I do now is about creating tribe for the modern man.
And what changed for you in the moments where you had these men come in and were able to like provide that for you?
I remember there was this moment where, you know, I'd been through a really big process, like a trauma reenactment. So I'd reenacted, you know, a situation from my early life and confronted this man who was playing the role of my father, and it got really heated. And then by the end, I was just a sobbing mess. You know, and we reconciled in this reenactment, and the man was holding me, and then the 40, 50 odd men in the room, big room of guys in this process, they were all wrapped around in this massive group hug. And I was sobbing my eyes out into the arms of a man I'd never met, who was holding me in a way that was genuine, caring, authentic. It was there for my healing. It was there in service to me. And I remember it was like a thunderclap of like, I made a deal with God, creator, universe, whatever word, you know, resonates. I just made a deal. I was like, okay, everybody needs this. So, you know, that was the moment that sort of set me off down the path. And yeah, it's something that I've made my life's work and focus ever since.
I love that. It reminds me very much of one of my first experiences in a group of men. I sat in a men's circle years ago now, and at the time I was depressed, I was anxious, and it was the first time I shared with men that I wanted to kill myself.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, fuck, to be held in that, in a space of love and being like, our pain is welcome. That changes things when we actually have that experience where all the emotion, all the pain, all the things that we feel like we can't share as men is being able to be held space for, and just like, hey man, this is okay. You get this. It changes our life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for you, that was a pivotal point where you realized, hey, I'm here to serve.
At that point, I hadn't yet decided that it was my job to give it to everybody. I just knew that I wanted to be a part of it, and I knew that it was like this awareness that there was a piece missing. And, you know, I got the bug. You know, I went back to their sequel events and went through their full curriculum, and, you know, shout out to and massive credit to Real Education for the Real Man work that Real Man was the program I went through, and so much respect and love for Murray, my teacher there, and everything that he provided. And yeah, it was just my experience of doing their work, and which led into volunteering on their workshops and being, you know, on crew there. And, you know, after a little while, it started to dawn on me that I had some skills, I had a passion. I'd come from a career of communicating. I'd come from a career of facilitating change. I came from, you know, an industry where helping people go from where they are to where they want to be was part of the skill set I developed. And yeah, there was so much crossover, there was such a good fit, and it just happened and evolved really naturally. When I look back now, I was pretty obsessed. I fucking spent every dollar I had, every waking moment, listening to books, podcasts, going to workshops, seminars, retreats. Men's work, personal development, psychology just became a fucking healthy obsession.
Yep. I feel like most people on this path have had that stage where it's like, this is my world and this is all I'm about. I know I've had that period where it's like all my money's going towards it. And like when you share it, I'm like, this is the initiation experience into this work. And to be willing to have that experience, you know, where we are supporting others who are leaders and actually being able to hold that space, not as the leader per se, but actually as someone who's supporting that is such a part of the initiatory experience.
Yeah, 100%. And what I realized now is I was going through my apprenticeship, looking back. And I remember there was a moment where I really decided to sort of take things take it on myself. Was, you know, after probably the first workshop, I got out of this experience. It's like a Sunday night. I've had this life-changing weekend. It's been like sacred and profound and fucking awesome. I've had more fun in 3 days than I have ever in my life. It was the most amazing 3 days of my life. Changed the trajectory. If I had to put a single event that changed my life the most, that would be it. But I came out of this experience. It was on the Sunday, and I'm like, okay, cool. Tribe, sacred, fuck yes, initiation. You know, where to from here? And they go, come back in 6 months for the sequel workshop. And I was like, what? And join the Facebook group. And I'd look in the Facebook group and it was a couple of ladies that would post memes, you know, and I'm like, no disparagement to these guys, love their work. That's what they did at that time. But I was like, nah, fuck that. I need more. So literally a month after my first workshop, I had the audacity to run my first men's circle. And that was the word that they used to describe what I was doing. This fucking guy, yeah, audacity. And then I wasn't teaching anything. It was just, I've got a fire. I want to see you men. So I just invited all the bros that I met through the community and just said, hey, I'm hosting a circle. And I just passed a piece of paper around with a couple of words on there and just said, hey, reflect on what these things mean to you. So I ran my first men's circle as a fucking greenhorn right out of the fucking back of my first men's work event. So, yeah, and that just kind of started the journey that I realized that if it wasn't there, I needed to create it.
I love this piece. Like, I'm a big believer in the mythic, and I love like the mythopoetic movement of actually viewing a lot of these things through myth. And it's like in that moment you decided to, in a sense, leave the tribe or start your own tribe.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about that internal experience where you've gone from being like a member of the tribe to actually becoming a leader who's willing to stand for something more.
Yeah.
And that experience there to actually see, because a lot of people have that experience where it's like, cool, I'm in the tribe, and then it's like, what's next? Where can I go from here? And they can feel a little bit contracted of like, I don't have the capacity to go stand out or like leave the tribe. And this is such an important part to step into our own masculinity. So in that experience, like, what changed for you in them moments?
It wasn't always smooth sailing. So when I founded Primal Man Project, and I can tell you the story about how that happened, but when I did found it, there were individuals who were part of the community that I was a part of that were in opposition, that essentially told me I needed to complete certain amounts of training or I needed to get permission. And I want to be clear that that's not the position of the facilitator. That's not the position of the teacher. Him and I are on great terms, and he's supportive of what I do, but humans are human. So someone leaves a tribe to create their own, there was a bit of resistance there. And it was actually perfect because that resistance actually provided me the fuel that I needed. Those individual conversations were like, okay, fantastic. I can't do this. Great. Fucking watch me. And I know that's a little bit impetuous, a little bit of a little boy kind of defiance energy, but at that time where I was, that was great. That was fuel for the fire. And for a couple of years, I made sure that what I didn't contradict or compete with the tribe that I was still a part of. It was still a big part of my life. So I offered a one-day retreat that was outdoors when they were offering multi-day events. I would offer online men's circle and in-person men's circle. They weren't offering men's circle. Yep. So I wanted to be complementary, not competitive to the tribe. And it's really only been in the last probably 2 to 3 years where I've completely left the nest and no longer, volunteer at their workshops, but still on great terms, and we still have so much love and respect for each other. Very different things we do, but yeah, it's still got lots of love for the home, for the OG tribe.
And it's such a beautiful thing. And even this, I think of it as a young bull who's like, I'm raring to go. I've got all this energy, that us as young men, or just when we get that fire, we can be a little bit immature and all of that. And it's also a little bit necessary. There's
got to be some conflict with, with the dad, right? This is part of the initiatory journey for young boys. And I think often mothers get the brunt of this, this phase of the testosterone boost around that 11, 12, 13. And traditionally, that's when initiation would happen, right? The boys would be taken out from the care of the mother and sent off into the bush or into their initiatory journey. And then they'd be brought into their own masculinity and say, all right, you're no longer a child. We now expect this standard of you. And that energetically was what happened. There was enough of that sense of, okay, energetically butting heads or energetically feeling like I needed to leave the nest. It was perfect. It happened as it was supposed to. But yeah, so much love for those guys.
And I don't take it as a coincidence, as what you're creating right now is called the Forge. And it's that steel sharpens steel. It's 100%. Needed.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's really exciting. So we're almost 5 years in. So, 4.5 years of Primal Man project. So I founded in 2020 and I ran 3 men's circles every week for probably 3.5 years. Last count was probably a couple of hundred men's circles, and we ran them all for free. And that was a big part of what I felt like was my rite of passage into facilitation and holding space and circle for men. And it's also part of what I wanted to give back. And, it came a point where it really needed to be a thing that people were invested in. And when I was giving this away for free, men weren't putting skin in the game. So, we've been working in the last 6 months to create a community, a container in an online platform called The Forge. And we launched 2 weeks ago, and we've got 33 men in there right now, which is a really cool number. And it's a low ticket investment, but it's enough to have skin in the game. And those guys are showing up every week, and it's fucking awesome to have a Zoom screen just full of faces from all over the country. It feels like a great evolution.
I love this, and I'd love if you can speak more into this concept of actually putting skin in the game.
Yeah.
Because as I've done this the same when I started my coaching, I was doing a lot of free offerings.
Yeah.
And it's cool, I was getting me experience, which was great, and I was learning and building confidence and all of this. And there was an aspect where the people I was coaching weren't fully invested, because it's I'm not valuing it. I was, because I was getting a lot from it, of skills, of developing my own ability.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the skin in the game, so they can only get so much results. But when we invest, there's an element of care, and it doesn't mean it needs to be a lot, it needs to be something, but this willingness to actually put our skin on the line and be like, I'm in. And what you've seen when men are willing to do that, and when it's this half commitment of I'll show up because, why not? And the difference between the two.
I've wrestled with this for a long time. I remember I had a business coach I worked with a couple of years ago, Jess Clare, an absolute legend, and she said to me, what are you doing giving away men's circles for free? She was coaching me in my business, so she said, look, charge for these things. And I had this, maybe it was a nice guy thing of wanting to give so I could feel worthy and enough. Maybe it was a genuine altruistic intent, probably a little bit of both. Yeah. But what I've learned, and I've given away a lot, I've made a practice of giving away spots on my, 3-day retreat, which I've been running now for a couple of years, but it's $3,500 and I've sponsored, so Primal Man Project pays the costs for that man to come and attend. And I've done again that because I believe that men shouldn't miss out on the opportunity to do the work if he's enrolled, if he's committed, if he's the right man and he's going to receive. And the actual show up rates for those men in our post-retreat programs and containers and events, it's just, I continue to get shown and humbled the same lesson over and over and over again, that a person will only be as enrolled as they've had to expend effort, time, energy, and money to be there. So yeah, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big experience I've had, and my experience is I'm more willing than they are.
Yep.
And that's the rescuer dynamic. And I've caught myself in it where it's like, oh, I want this man to evolve. I want this person to get the results and get like his shit together and be able to go beyond this. And
show up, motherfucker, show up. I'm fucking here. I'm fucking
yeah. And like there's been my own wounding in that where it's like, I want you to get something out of this, but it's also like that deep desire for a man to realize his own potential.
Yep.
And it's fucking beautiful when they can do that. But there's actually this humbleness to take a step back and be like, cool, I believe in you, but you've got to take that step.
For me, it comes down to the worth that I try and get from the results I want for him that he doesn't want as much as I do.
Yeah.
That sense of, if I can get this man this breakthrough, I'm enough.
Yeah.
And that detachment is, still something I'm working on. I'll have guys invest. Like my 12-month program's, $10,000, and they receive a retreat at 12, a deep online container, and then an ongoing mastermind. And I'll have guys go through the experience, get initiated, become part of our tribe, go through the deep work, a course that I run around purpose, and then just flail out the back end, and I'm like, I'm making it about me. What have I not done? What have I not provided? What do I need to do differently? Full responsibility. But again, that comes from this wounded place of feeling like I'm going to be abandoned.
Yeah.
That's really like that feeling of like they've left me.
Yeah.
And if they've left me, I'm not enough. And it's like, fuck, I can take it horse to water. It's such a cliche, but yeah, I think it applies here.
Yeah, and such a humbleness as a facilitator to step away and trust a person's journey of like, I trust in this is what's best for you, even if I'm like, I know there's another path for you here. You get on the fucking boat and come with me. I know there's a way through here. And they're like, no, I don't want to do this. And it's like, can we honor them enough? And also...
No. I'm going to throw stones on the way out. Fuck you and your fucking projections, and you're fucking wounded and you're fucking this way and I know better than you and all that. And I'm in my ego and fuck you and... It's not me, it's you, and bro, yeah. Yes.
It's this constant reminder that we need to be doing the work ourselves.
Oh, no, we don't need to do the work. We just, no. That's right.
We're perfect. Yeah. We've got the podcast mics, we are perfect.
Correct. Yeah, I'm standing at the front, therefore I've got it all figured out. No.
Yeah. I feel like this is a great segue because I feel like this is a change in model of leadership that I'm loving is where like, as leaders, we're allowed to fuck up. We're allowed to get it wrong. And this for me has been like where I've felt like an imposter and actually just started owning my shit. Hey, I feel like I fucked up. Like, and just allowing myself to be seen in that has given me such permission to be a leader without having it all right. And this is like, I don't know, for me, the idea that as a leader, I need to be perfect kills me.
Yep.
I've fucked up. I've hurt people. I've messed around in my business and haven't got people the results I want. I've done a lot of great work. I can own that. But like for me, this humbleness of being like, hey, we get to be ourselves. We get to be human. And like, have you seen this in your own journey of like the willingness to be human and like
every day, bro?
Yeah,
every day. I've got a rabid perfectionist that hangs out. He lives rent free. And he's he is the voice I hear the loudest when I feel like I'm not living up to my own expectations. So, growing up as a kid, I remember I have this really specific memory, like driving along in the car. Probably might have been like 6 or 7 years old, and my dad, super smart guy, very successful, very driven, set a very high bar for himself and for all of us. I was one of 5, and he asked me a question and I got the answer wrong. And bless him, having a hard day, whatever was going on for him, I got so much compassion and actually gratitude for what this created. But he looked at me and he just said, "You're thick. You're thick." And just in that moment, I made the decision that it wasn't okay to get the answer wrong. And for me, that created a value. I have a value of excellence. Yeah. And the shadow of that value of excellence is perfectionism. And so getting it wrong and being willing to get it wrong is still a process that I'm working on every day. Yeah. But what's really confirming evidence of it's a good strategy of being vulnerable and authentic is that one of the pieces of feedback that I have felt most appreciative of from my work is that men come up and say, hey, you don't feel like a guy that's standing up the front proclaiming to have it all figured out. You seem to talk a lot about your fuck-ups and you feel very relatable when you do that. So, yeah, it's a pretty core part of what I do and what I share is that I'm here to share the ways that I fucked up and the things that I learned from that.
Yeah. It's such a different way of leadership because it's like, hey guys, this is me.
Yeah.
And it, like for me, there's been such a illusion that you need to be perfect to be a leader. Mm-hmm. And you need to be the guru, someone up on stage having it all perfect. And it's like, that's not the way to healing. If I'm going to follow a man, I want to know his imperfections and what he's struggled with so I can accept them within myself.
100%.
And that's the man I'm going to back. And that's the man I want to be for others of like, no, I've messed up.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I'm learning to love myself in that. And I'll continue down that path of like, it's okay to be me. So they can be okay to be them.
One of the things that for me, like when I think about being out in front of people or being in a platform where I'm sharing ideas, representing this is valuable information, is that the fear of judgment, is there. And what I've tried to do, not always perfectly, but if I get out in front and share all the things that I've been and I've done in my life, what are people going to criticize me about? Like, what is there to criticize? I've given all this information away for free from the beginning. I've been a sex addict. I've cheated on partners. I've been out of integrity in relationships. I've broken trust. I've had addiction with porn. If you Google my name, like the words that come up are the things that people in public positions would probably hate to want to be known about them. So I'm like, look, here it is. This is the ways that I'm still fucking up. And the hope is it's like, hey, this is my genuine process of learning. This is genuinely what I'm still learning about myself. I hope this serves. If it doesn't, cool. But, that's all I can do.
There's a beautiful humbleness in this, in the willingness to be seen in like all of it. Because how many of us, and I know I've been this, just want to be seen in my good. Like, just like, see me as perfect, see me as like love and light. And
I've got it all figured out.
And it's like my ego loves that, but there's a really beautiful humbleness and a groundedness that comes when we're willing to admit the things that we aren't willing, like we don't want to be seen, the shame, the things that we want to tuck under the rug and hope mum doesn't find, because that's really what it is. It's just like, hey, don't look there. I'm the perfect little boy.
Or the kids from school, you know, like I did this process when I was really questioning why I was judging myself in showing up online and doing things. And I had a coach lead me through this process. He's like, who are you actually wondering, who's going to judge you? Who are you really afraid of? And where it actually came down to was somebody I went to high school with. It's 2 decades ago now. It's not even a person who has any relevance in my life, but I still hold on to that, to that little boy that doesn't want to be the kid that's out of place, which is a big part of what I experienced. I didn't belong. So but belonging, having it figured out, kind of connect for me is a pattern that still shows up for sure.
And it's so beautiful when we can see that little boy and realize they get to come with. They get to come with. And like, this is a piece that I feel like you have a lot of knowledge about, is the dark masculine, which I see very interconnected with our ability to own our own shame and our own shadow and actually bring that through. And I'm wondering of your own experience in like how them two have interconnected for you. Yeah,
it's a really cool question. So I guess for me, the dark masculine is an area of work that I've been focused on in the last couple of years. And I didn't invent the idea of dark masculine. It's been around and talked about in the area of, I suppose, archetypal energies. And I had this amazing experience with someone I was in partnership with, where my darkness was welcome. So we were intimate for the first time, and it was fucking wild, like bite marks and scratch marks and animal noises and fucking just imagine a complete scene of mayhem in the aftermath. And it felt like for me, that was something that in other circumstances I may have felt like, oh, shit, I want to go a bit too far. And what she said to me was, more. I want more of that. And I just have so much gratitude for the experience of feeling welcome in my darkness, and not just welcome, but celebrated. And that began the journey for me to really reflect on my traditional understanding of masculinity with, the four primary archetypes, which I kind of now refer to as the light masculine. So the king, the magician, the warrior, and the lover, which they have an element of them, for me anyway, that slightly connotates obedience or conformance to a set of rules or principles of a society. Because if you think about it, indigenous or ancient cultures would not have had dedicated standing armies to have the position of a warrior, because every man would needed to be able to embody that part of himself. And the king, the idea of having a regent or a head of, a kingdom, again, sort of denotes this environment where we're existing inside of a civilization. So the idea of those four, what I call, light masculine archetypes, just felt a little incomplete for me. Great foundation, great place to start, great model for masculinity and understanding who you are as a man. But I was like, there's something missing. So I looked at this energy of what I identified in this first experience of making love to my partner was described as the beast. This primordial savagery, but expressed in a really caring way while also wanting to fucking ravage and destroy her. And I was like, it doesn't fit anywhere. It doesn't fit in this model. So what I realized is it sat between the lover and the warrior. There's a physicality, there's a dominance, there's a visceral experience of power from the warrior, and there's also the care that comes from the lover. And if you think about the image of Beauty and the Beast, Beast is this fucking gnarly, powerful, primordial being, and Belle, standing under his protection, this feminine, radiant, soft, vulnerable woman. And the contrast between those two, that's the image I think of when I think of the beast. And that sort of began my journey to really look at where are the other aspects of myself that I've shut down, that I've shamed, that society has told me is wrong and bad, that are actually really deeply ingrained for me, that are there as instincts as a man. And I started, identifying what they were for me and validating them with other men, saying, hey, does this exist for you? And I started to see that there was this framework of other archetypes that I could see were present, not just for me, but for men, what I consider almost universally. And it's been a focus of my work ever since.
Like for me, I often see this path as a descent-based path. Like when we're looking at the light, we're looking at the light archetypes as you speak of them, it's like very ascension-based. We're looking to ascend to a different level. And what you're talking about with the dark is descending into the earth, into the roots of this plane and this being. And that for me often involves sexuality, our primalness, our animal. It's like all these components that are suppressed, and it sounds like they're the layers that you started to work through, where there was shame and conditioning about it's not okay to be this as a man, of that primordial animal that does want to fuck, ravage and destroy. It's that's ingrained within us. And how many men suppress that? I know I have, and it's something I'm still learning to be more in, and I think we all are. It's that's a big part, but it's been so shunned.
Conditioning is a big part for me. On the Sharpen the Spear, which is our 3-day initiation into the dark masculine, we talk about identifying and removing conditioning, and then discovering and embodying your true nature. And for me, the true nature means these instincts and desires that are present for all men, which have been there since the beginning of our evolution as this species, they are there whether we like it or not. They're going to exist. So you have a choice. You either suppress them or you embrace and channel them. And I definitely haven't got the balance right. A lot of times I've been the seducer, which is for me the dark side of the lover. And I've expressed that out of integrity, been manipulative with women, had sexuality driving my behaviors and desires in an unhealthy way. And it was going into that and reflecting on it and learning from it, realizing, okay, that's a valid part of me. That's a true part of me. And it's how do I now express that in integrity as best I can.
Yeah. And that was the journey as you've been discovered more and more of that and like welcomed it home. It's been able to come into a greater place of integrity.
Yeah, definitely. And there are definitely moments that I've misstepped. There's definitely moments when I haven't maintained that integrity. So it's not me claiming a space of having figured this all out and now standing on some station of fucking enlightenment about it. But I realized that I have become a lot more integral with the way that I express these than I have in the past. I'm more integral today than I was before I started doing this work. I'm more in touch with those desires. I'm more connected to what I want. I'm more accepting of who I am than I ever was. And yeah, all I can do is continue to discover and express these as best I can in my partnerships and in my life. Like, it's not just about relationships either. Like, it's, for me, the dark masculine expression of the warrior is the savage. It's part of me that wants to fucking destroy, and just the bloodlust of the rage of that primordial being that would just wants to destroy. That energy exists, again, for me, and I think probably for all men, if it's fair to say. How do I find places, healthy, productive places to put that competition, that masculine,
conflict,
and in a way that doesn't destroy, in a way that doesn't hurt, that the instinct and that desire is celebrated and brought through, but in a way that doesn't ruin people's lives.
Yeah. And I know for me, when I've had that energy and I haven't allowed it to express, I've wanted to burn down my business. I've wanted to burn down relationships. It's like, I just want to destroy something, even if it's beautiful, even if I love it. It's just like, I want to fucking destroy. And like this piece you're sharing about the dark masculine, it's like, for me, I always find our wounding is what we're here to teach as well. And it's this constant cycle of like, cool, this is where I've felt deficient. And this is where I've met my own pains, and this will continue to initiate me so I can serve at a greater capacity. And that's all it is.
Yeah, the pain becomes the purpose, for sure. Looking back now, I realize I needed to be in environments where I didn't fit in. I needed to explore, my own realms of darkness and addiction to discover that it wasn't a fruitful way to live. And I have no judgment about anybody in different stages of promiscuity or different relationship configurations. I hold no judgment. I just have learned that it has consequences. And
I think when we're in a leadership position, it actually allows us to have greater compassion for those people that we're here to serve as well. It's like, I see someone who's depressed, and that's my background, and it's like, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be self-harm, and I know what it's like to want to kill myself. And it's like, I can hold compassion for that and know the pathway through that because I've been there. And it's such a beautiful thing to be like, cool, I see where you are. I welcome that. I'm not going to judge you because that doesn't help. And you can actually come through that. And that's beautiful.
What was your pathway out of depression?
For me, it was like a lot of coaching, mentoring, eventually men's circles, quite a bit of psychedelics as well. But that, I'm not going to lie, probably didn't serve for a little bit. Like, it helped me open my world because I felt very stuck and suppressed in a system that I didn't align with. And so it crumbled that. But there was a period of feeling very lost and alone after that. Which led me to men's work and men's circles, which allowed me to ground back down from all the spiritual, higher ascension-based work.
Yeah, I think my reflection on the ascent versus descent, I think there's a bit of tendency for people to throw shade on each side, that I think it all has its place. And for me, the center point, and I remember my teacher said there's something so simple to me. He said, he reached his hand up and he said, I'm connected to God. Put his hand down. He says, I'm grounded to the earth. And he put his hand to his left and he said, I'm free from the past. And he said, I'm unafraid of the future. And he said, and where that leaves me is here and now. As a spiritual being having a human experience with a divine right of being for who I am and where I am. And I do try to remember that, that there is absolutely a place for the medicine journeys and the spiritual enlightenment and the ascension and the deep, 10-day Vipassana retreats and then also the deep shadow work of fucking crying your guts out and just looking at all the shitty things I've done to people and how I've fucked up and all the things I can own and be ashamed of. But fuck me, don't stay there. You know, and I have so much compassion for folks that, you know, they're just like, I'm still deep in it right now. I'm so in it, you know. It's like weeks go by or months go by. I'm like, yeah, I'm really moving through some stuff right now, and I'm really in this portal of all this emotion and turmoil. I was like, cool. At some point, there needs to be a decision. At some point, there needs to be a choice. And I'm talking to men here, you know, that there's a future that's available to you when you make a choice to step forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is a little bit of a trap. And I know I was trapped in that of like, I need to be constantly processing and looking for more and going deeper and deeper. And really the underlying wound and the pattern for that was I wasn't good enough, so I had to fix myself to be loved.
Yeah. It's the shadow of shadow work.
Yeah. It's like you're doing this so you can be loved, not as a way to love yourself.
Yeah.
And until you come to that place of like, I'm actually okay and I do desire to work from me. And there's a paradox here because sometimes you actually do need to do the work to become okay.
Yeah. Harmony, balance in all things, for sure. For me, I'm a very pragmatic dude about what I think is really helpful for a man in his life. And when a man comes to me and says, I'm depressed, I say, go help somebody. He said, what do you mean? I need help. It's like, no, go help someone else. And, you know, they say that like the definition of depression is like rumination, right? Mm-hmm. Reflection on your own thoughts. That's the state that people enter in when they're depressed. Thinking about your thinking won't solve the problem. And I posted something about this the other day. I got some people triggered. It's like talking about your problems can only get you so far. Yeah. You know, it's the action that you take as a result of that. You know, and even if that's just to go for a walk, even if it's like go to the gym, even if it's just to eat cleaner, to have a conversation with a loved one, it's call a bro, go to a circle. You know, whatever the action is, that's fantastic. But if there's no action and all that's done is talk, I think we're in mental masturbation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it takes time. Like there is a point where it's like if you've never talked to someone,
for sure,
that's your starting point.
Absolutely,
start there. But if you've been talking to the same story for a little while, well, you're stuck in a loop, and it's time to do something different. It's like
telling the same story for a while now. I remember I used to sit in men's circles, and I got a bit of shade for this recently. I posted on socials about the distinction between a men's circle and a mastermind, and you know I don't offer men's circles anymore. Because my experience was at times, I'm not saying everybody, and I'm not saying every circle, but at times my experience of men's circles have been that, you know, you go to circle and then you come back 3 months later and the same guys are telling the same story, and there's no challenge, there's no action, there's no accountability. It's just, thank you for sharing. And again, I think there's a place for that. To be heard is a great thing, and there's an end in itself. But it's like, what happens next?
Yeah. And this, like, for me, is where someone needs to be holding that pillar of like, hey, let's call each other forward. And like, maybe you only want to be talking for it. But if I'm in the circle and I've been talking about the same thing for a couple of weeks and I haven't done anything, I desire a man to call me on my shit because I'm in my shit.
Yeah. And if you're not getting called on your shit, then it's not really men sitting in circle. It's just a sharing space.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. This is my definition. I sit in circle weekly, and we have a rule that if you bring the same thing twice, there better be some committed action that's being taken. And if you come for a third time with the same problem, there's going to be a barbecue. Like it's on.
Yeah. And that's needed at times. It's like, wow, I've been in this. Like, why have you not changed? Why have you not done something different? And it's like, well, I don't know, but maybe I do need that support. But the support looks loving in the fact I'm calling you forward into your own greatness, not in the loving I'm going to allow you to sit in your own bullshit again and again.
And that doesn't mean to say there's not a compassionate space. Yeah. You know, I've gone through a separation recently, and it's been, there's been there's some times where I don't need a solution. I don't have an action. There's nothing to commit to. It's just fucking hard. Yeah. You know, I had a beautiful relationship. Things happened that I probably won't go into here, but that there's a lot of love there still, and there's a lot of and there was a lot of good there. And sitting in a space where men can just hear that and just say, yep, I got you. And what do you need? And sometimes, it is just to be heard. And, cycling through that, it's like the second and then the third week and then, okay, cool. All right. Now there's some things I now can start doing. There's some things I would like to be held accountable on.
Yeah.
So I think, like all things, man, I think there's a balance.
Yeah, it's the nuance of these conversations where we can say one thing in like a situation like grief, and I mean anything by grief. It's like grief cycles and circulates, and there's many experience, and just sitting in it doesn't mean we're bringing our problems, but just allowing ourselves to be in it is very different than being like save me or fix me. It's just like I'm in this, and this is okay to be in this.
Yeah, that's part of what I think. I'm more a warrior, kind of king, action orientation. I think personality generally. So being in that being side of the lover and being in the magician of the silence and the space that's my opportunity. It's something I don't do as naturally. So it's something I'm working on, is actually allowing myself to be.
And this is it for a lot of us men, where it's like, I'm really great over here. And it's like, where are our weaknesses? And it's like, I don't want to go over there. I don't want to go over there, universe. No, don't make me go there.
I mean, you want me to sit in my emotion? Fuck. Okay. Yes, I got to sit in my grief. No, look, and it's been a great experience, because, if I had been through this separation, well, fuck, the last separation I went through, I took a very, very different strategy to how I was processing that emotion. In the past I would have jumped back on Tinder and lined up the next few dates and, gone back into some old patterns of seeking comfort. And for me at the moment, it's the furthest thing from what I'm looking for. And it's just not what I'm doing. So for me right now, it's allowing myself to be in the grief. And I think that whatever the future holds in terms of our friendship or possibility for the future, it's like I'm really clear that for me right now, the place that I need to be is just within myself and just being. So it's kind of something I'm working on at the moment. It's an edge.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, man. I really appreciate you bringing that permission and like that vulnerability of realness here.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
thanks for the space.
Yeah, really good to see you.
Thanks, brother. Good to be seen.
Just want to take a moment. It's beautiful. Man, are you okay if we segue a little bit?
For sure.
Yeah. You mentioned like earlier on about the primal man and like how that got created. And I just want to segue back into that, because I feel like the origin story is something I've heard, and I've always loved like these pieces. It's like the vision come alive, and then, the time to create and the devotion to such a vision is always beautiful. So I really want to know what birthed the primal man for you.
Oh, bro, it's a pretty cool story. So I went on a men's work event, Blaze Grinner, coach in the Sunny Coast. I went on one of his bloke venture retreats, and really cool, just, a little UE boom box on the sand, some sand with a towel, and we did a breath work. And by this stage, I was pretty deep in the men's work scene at that stage for, whatever it was, the 2 years, but, I'd been doing it pretty intently and had already decided I wanted to become a coach. I could see that was there for me, and I've been volunteering, and so it was the soil was pretty fertile. And I went into this breath work, and so this was like a holotropic style, so big breathe, and I saw a man's face, and it was all dark around the outside of his face. So all I could see was his face, and his hair was long, his beard was long. He looked wild. It looked like this man was unkept, in a sense, but his skin was clean, and his eyes were bright blue. His skin was weathered, and I just don't know how I know, but in a dream, these states you just know without knowing how you know. I just knew he was an ancestor, and I knew he was an ancestor for modern Europeans, Caucasian ancestor. And the look on his face was forlorn. Like there was a deep sadness there. And he didn't say a word. He just looked at me and looked into me. And I realized he was disappointed in all of us. And fuck. Okay. That's pretty heavy. And once he saw that I got the message, it was just this nod. And the nod was, what are you going to do about it? And and woke up from that vision, breathed, and just the words that stayed with me were primal man. And what I receive from that is that there is a way that we're living in the modern world that is a long way from the way we were designed to live. And I'm part of the problem. Living away from tribe, living away from nature, living away from the sacred, living away from essentially everything that we were in almost every way. And it felt like it was my marching orders. And registered the Facebook and Instagram page the next day, as the sign of starting businesses these days. It's like, if you haven't got a Facebook page, is it really even a business, bro? And it just, it brought together for me so many things that I didn't even realize were there, germinating under the surface. The experience I've had in growing up in PNG, the experience of going through initiatory practice with men's work and initiation, a deep belief, like a deep fascination in evolution. I would always ask this question. I didn't know why at the time, but I would always ask people, what would the caveman do? Like, what would we be doing here? And my ex-wife, she was like, why do you always talk about the caveman? She's like, I'm fucking done with this caveman. Whoever this caveman is, I want to meet him one day because the dude seems to run my life. We have to ask about the caveman all the time. But it just fascinated me how fucking completely ridiculously out of our alignment with our basic evolutionary principles everything about our modern day life is. Our food, our shelter, our environment, the way we spend our time, how we focus our energy, what we do in every single conceivable way is the polar opposite to our basic principles of evolutionary biology, of what we were likely to be needing to do. So for me, that kind of synthesized into something that was quite coherent. We were living a long way from our design, and I jammed together a dodgy looking logo from fucking Canva, stolen gifs on the internet, and then just started a Facebook page and started running men's circles pretty much pretty soon after that, and everything else from there has just evolved, and it's become for me an intersection. Like Primal Man Project, what it really represents is the intersection between our evolutionary biology. What is the human man designed to be doing? What is the current science around positive psychology and how to get the best from our mind and how we think, with the current science around neuroscience? What is the brain telling us, the signals that we can read now with machines that didn't exist 20 years ago about the chemicals and the responses in the body? Like, what is the definitive proof about this human machine and how it's responding to our environment? And then the final piece, which really brings it all together, is ancient wisdom. Because in any of these modern day biohacking, in any of these life optimizing strategies, in any of these things, you go back to the ancient texts, you go back to the indigenous wisdom, and there it is, correlated 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. But, that's oral tradition, right? We didn't have written. But for me, putting those pieces together gets into the center of how do we live as a primal man, as a primordial being in this modern world.
It changes how we operate within this world.
Yeah. We can't go back to living on the plains of Africa where we probably evolved. We can't go back to living in the caves of Europe where some of us were probably more recently evolved. But what we can reintroduce into society and into our lives as men specifically are a couple of core principles. And the three pillars of my work in Primal are power, purpose, and pack. And power for me is initiatory rites of passage that has a man discover who he is, discover what he's capable of, is put through a very difficult experience, and then given an opportunity to hold himself to that, and others hold him to a standard of power. And power meaning compassionate as well as driven, as well as assertive, as well as playful, peaceful, powerful, purposeful. So that's, for me, that's power. And the second for me is purpose. If you lived in tribes, you'd have a big tribe of people that you were here to contribute to. And there's a whole rabbit hole we can fucking go down in there about that. But that's the thing that I think a lot of men don't have, a lot of men miss, is having something other than your family that you're contributing to.
Well, even going back to your comment before about depression, if you're depressed, go help someone.
Exactly.
There's purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And the final is pack. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but for me, it's a group of people who, and for me, it's men who inspire, challenge, support, and hold me accountable to who I say that I am. So those three pillars for me represent the summation of the work that I've done to discover essentially what the framework, like a core framework for operation, for a man, for living a good life. And for me, when you put those three things in a Venn diagram, for me, what sits in the middle is having an impact and creating abundance.
Two very important pillars.
For sure. Yeah. And impact for me just means the thing that I'm doing is of some use. And the abundance is abundance of time, play, joy, resources, wealth, experience, freedom.
Yeah. And the piece I love about this is the individuality of like what abundance and what impact can be for an individual man.
For sure.
Like when I started this path, I was like, I need to make massive impact that affects the world. And it's like, do I even want that? Like some part of me is like, actually, that's not really important. I just want to do my part. And it's like figuring out what that is has been such a game changer, which has allowed a landing in the body of like, cool, this is my path. This is my purpose right now. You don't need to save the world to have an impact.
Yeah. I definitely suffered from some of that, delusions of grandeur and grandiosities for sure. When I started, because in the idea of purpose, I teach, I run a program called The Path, and it really helps men find their bearing, find their orientation to something that's big and worthy to do. And we help a man create his mission, his big, hairy, audacious goal, and then we break it down. But my BHAG was 1 million men meaningfully impacted by the Primal Man Project in the next 10 years. And I'm 4.5 years in now. I've changed that number. I want 100,000 men impacted, and it's not shying away from the goal, but it's deciding what the kind of life is I want to live. So it's still making a significant impact. It's still creating things that have a global reach, but it's doing it at a depth that I can still have connection with those people. Yeah. I can still speak from stage. I can still run events. I can still have an ability to be in an environment with people.
Yeah. And I think this also speaks to the willingness of what we're willing to sacrifice along the way as well. Like it's probably very likely you could do 1 million, but what would that cost you and your life that you want to live as well? Yeah. And like, are we going for balance? Are we being the transmission of what we want in the world, or are we only going for the big number?
Fame, just fame and fortune, buddy. Fame and fortune. No. Yeah. I love to be intimate with people and experiences, and what I mean by that is like my 3-day events, we have 12 participants and we have a similar number of crew. It's 22 men, I want to be able to be in a room where I don't need name tags and be able to sit at one table. Yeah. That's that kind of intimacy is really sexy for me. And, I might get a few years down the track and go, you know what, that 100,000 just doesn't feel good anymore. It's more like 10. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and this is a refinement, right? It's like it can be exciting to have the big audacious goal, and then we start going towards it a couple of years later, and it's like, I love that goal. Maybe it will happen, but there's less attachment to that. But I know I'm on my path as well.
Yeah, for me, it's the difference between commitment versus attached. Like I'm committed to the process. Yeah. I'm committed to the journey, but I'm not attached to what it needs to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go into this, like probably one of the last pieces here today of like, you spoke of like the birth of the primal man and the vision you had that really allowed that to come in. And then you've been in it for 4.5 years now. So I want to speak into the devotion it takes to create a vision and bring that into the world, and what that process has been like for yourself of holding that this time.
Eating a big bag of dicks every day. No, I love what I do. I heard this great quote from, I think it's I always fuck this up, Mason or Manson.
I know who you talk about.
Subtle art of not giving a fuck. Yeah. And he talks about finding your purpose is like eating a shit sandwich. He's like, one person might eat that shit sandwich and think it tastes nutty and delicious. And another person might eat that shit sandwich and think it's fucking foul. find the shit sandwich that doesn't taste too bad. You know, for me, devotion to my purpose, which is to empower men to live life by their design, to have lives of impact and abundance. Like I'm clear about that as my North Star, and I'm devoted to men as a I don't say as a baseline, but like as a basic position, I'm devoted to men living epic lives. Mm-hmm. And anything I can do to impact that is what I'm here to do. And it does help a lot in doing all the things that I have to do, which I don't love to do. You know, this is fucking awesome. If the world could hear about what I am doing through conversations like this, I'd be laughing. But as we were chatting before, you know, like the social media and the ads and the advertising and the marketing and the sales, I mean, the business side of Primal, it's not something I thought I would have to create. I'm committed to it. I love the outcome. But yeah, definitely being deeply devoted to who I'm here to serve has helped me eat that shit sandwich.
The shit sandwich. And like, this is the truth. I like, you know, we want to do something that feels good and feels exciting. And like, I love this all the time. And it's like, you may be able to create that in your life. And this is a conversation I have with people. It's like, you may be able to create that at some point, but there's got to be things along the way that you don't want to do. And you need to do them.
This wasn't in the fucking brochure.
Yeah. It's like, for me coming into coaching and like wanting to help people, I was like, and now I got to go learn marketing and sales.
Bro, it's 80% of the job. That was not in the fucking brochure. At my life coach training program, at my initiation, they said, if you want to be a coach, you got to eat a big bag of dicks full of marketing every fucking day. So just be aware, you'll be a professional marketer and a part-time coach.
Yeah. And like, it's humbling to be like, I need to learn how I can do this in a way that's for me in alignment with myself that I enjoy. Maybe it's outsourcing, maybe it's doing it in a creative way where it's like, I want to do this because I want to see how this can impact people. I want the end results, and being committed to that vision rather than this single moment while enjoying the moment. It's this fucking paradox, right?
Yeah, man, when you get that figured out, you let me know.
I'm continuing to learn, and it's humbling me along the way. Of like, and I'm a big fan of like the artist's way. And I can't remember the name of the guy right now, but he writes about it. It's like, when you find what you're here to bring this world, you're just showing up each and every day. We want the artist's life of the rock star, you know, it's big and wild. And it's like, no, it's devotion. It's each day you're showing up. For me, the keyboard, writing my post, sharing, doing all of that.
Yeah.
That's a daily practice.
Chopping wood, carrying water.
And if only there was another way.
Yeah. And look, I think I don't want to look like I'm fucking, you know, playing a little mini violin over here, like my poor life of my marketing. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to every man who said yes to our work. And if I didn't, you know, flipping the script on that for myself and calling myself out on that, like, if I didn't have those mediums of social media, if I didn't have the things that I use to communicate the ideas I have to men and call them in, you know, call them into their rites of passage and into their masculinity, into initiation, into really living incredible lives. If I didn't have those vehicles, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. You know, if I didn't have the years of sending DMs to strangers, you know, I used to have a team of VAs in the Philippines that would reach out, you know, do reach out to mutual friends. And it was just, you know, what my coach advised me to do at the time. And fuck, I look back now and I get those DMs and I'm like, bro, what are you doing? So yeah, man, it's been a journey. Chopping wood, carrying water.
Yeah. And like any initiation, we got to find things that we don't like and things we want to let go. It's like, you know, for me, then one of the next goals and the things I'm developing over the next couple of years is speaking on other people's stages and around the country, so I can actually meet people who are aligned with my work where I don't need to do as much social media. So also having visions where it's like knowing what we don't like as men and learning how to detach from that so we can be in more sovereign control of our lives as well.
Or just sucking it up and getting it done.
Because we haven't done that enough.
I'm talking to myself here. I just need to suck it up, stop complaining and get it done. But yeah, I get it. I mean, seeing the necessary work as part of a creative expression and a creative practice is something that I'm still learning to do. Yeah. It's not something that I've found a really neat groove with yet. So yeah, this is a great reflection. I'll take away this Dean wisdom of this podcast. Thank you for giving that to me, man.
This is more of the magician energy, man. This 100%. Is what you're coming into, and this is an energy I love to play with.
I know.
Let me sit in my tower top with my keyboard.
Yeah. when I remember when we met at Tigom, and I was like, yeah, just energetically, I think you and I sit at the opposite polarities. Yep. I think it's fair to say. Yep. I love being around men who have the polarity energies to me, because it's like, what can I learn here? Yeah. And it also triggers the fuck out of me.
Which is great, yeah. And like for me, the trigger is like an activation of like, oh, fuck, I want a bit of that as well. It's like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. What do I dislike in the experience, or dislike in a person, not you, but just in a thing?
You can dislike it in me. I'm okay to receive that.
Oh, it's all right. It's just as a generic statement, right? Like, what do I dislike in others? It's like, that's the part I'm judging in myself, right? Yeah. It's such a cliche, but when I see, and I've hung a bit of shit on dudes that I see when I go to some of these men's work events, and it's beads and it's hippie long hair, the dreads, and I'm like, they're like, yeah, I'm just going with the flow, and it's really just tuning in and really just feeling into my yoni, and like, and it's actually me judging that part of myself. Yeah. It's me judging the flow. It's judging the easefulness. It's me wanting it to be hard because I think it needs to be. Yeah. It's the fucking warrior that flagellates. This is me thinking about myself now. I'm like, I'm flagellating myself. It's like, it must be painful. It must be hard. I must make it harder. Flows for foofy dudes. I don't need flow. Yeah. I must make this a struggle.
Yeah. And that's the piece. It's like, as we integrate more parts of ourselves, we can have greater access to different states of being, and maybe it's flow, maybe it's ease. And it's that's my learning at the moment. Like, I'm like, can I experience grace in my business? And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that word. And I'm looking at your face, and you're like, fuck this guy. And I'm like,
grace, okay.
Like, but that idea of like their flow, ease, like ability to just be in it, be present, and not have to struggle. It's like, can I go beyond that, or like be in the struggle so deeply that I'm not fighting it?
Yeah, I guess we're probably coming at the same thing, maybe achieving a similar outcome, but considering it differently.
Yeah.
My experience of the struggle is I kind of have this Machiavellian like laughter to myself of my own pain. I'm a masochist, I think. I'm like, give me the pain. I just like it, and I'm going to fucking do it. I'm going to keep going. I'm not stopping. The outcome is the same. Yeah. But the experience of it for me is it's like a necessary evil rather than looking for the joy in it. So yeah, maybe. And look, there's a part of me that wants to like argue with you about it, because I'm like, nah, it sounds pretty feminine, bro. Like there's a part of me that's like judging that. But I also realize that's the wisdom that's missing for me. That's that flow piece that's missing.
And I can see like in myself, it's like, cool, I can have the aversion to the, like, I just need to get it done. There's been periods where I'm like, no, I just like, how can I make this get into a state where I know this will flow through me? Because I can spend 8 hours on a landing page, or I can do it in 1 hour.
Oh yeah.
And that will depend on the state I'm in, and being aware of like how I work within myself and bringing that awareness of like, what do I need to make this more easeful?
Yeah.
And knowing that, and that may mean going through some shit to get to that state as well.
For sure. I think there's a place for both.
Yeah.
There's a place for getting into a state. There's sometimes a place for just sitting at that desk until it's fucking done.
Yeah.
And that's why we have the warrior and the magician.
Yeah. That's why we're both here today. We're integrating one another and being like, okay, how can I be more like Jason? How can I be more like Dean?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Like I said, man, receiving a lot. Yeah. And it's definitely, I don't know, what's your listenership? Are they mainly men or women?
Pretty 50-50.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think about what the ladies and the guys out there be thinking. They're probably not worth speculating.
Yeah, but as we're going down that route, like, is there anything still alive that you want to like really share or feel like it wants to be here today?
Cool. No, I just want to express gratitude, man. It's been wild. I feel like it's only just getting warmed up now. That's also part of my like, I want to stick around. We're only just riffing now, but it's been good, man. No, there's nothing really here for me. in my work or in what I'm focused on right now that hasn't been shared. I guess I'm happy to, share a little bit more about how people might be able to reach out, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Please do.
Yeah, cool. So if you want to find out more about my work, Primal Man Project on Facebook and Instagram is the best place to have a look. And we've got a YouTube channel as well. But if men are interested in getting in touch, and I obviously work exclusively with men, you can reach out via the Facebook page and send us a DM and let us know you want to have a jam. And I'm so happy to have conversations with people. Yeah. I love it. So if there's curiosity there, if this strikes something, then reach out. We can have a chat.
Yeah. Cool. If you're looking for Jason's info, all his links will be in the show notes, so you can easily find that. Reach out to him. He's a man really enjoyed having on today, man. It's been an absolute pleasure, and like you said, much gratitude to you and what you're bringing to the table, and pleasure to sit here with you.
Yeah, thank you, bro. Appreciate you.
Thank you all for joining us on The Wyrd Way. That's us. Peace.